Says no. Well, welcome to Crossover Day. This is typically a long day in the legislature as people work through their bills, get them off the floor of their respective chambers and over to the other body for consideration. So I want to thank the legislators for all their hard work and commitment to the people of South Dakota. A couple of updates before I take your questions. COVID cases are declining, which is good news. Since Omicron variant hit the state of South Dakota, we are 80% down from our peak. Hospitalizations are down 60%. So we are continuing to monitor that and take care of the people of South Dakota, but also recognize that that is good news for our state and the people who live here. Several bills have been moving that we've been following and tracking closely. One of them is my telemedicine ban on chemical drugs that could be utilized to have abortions. What we have seen is that those medicines could be accessed by telephone or over the internet between a stranger and someone who is wanting an abortion. My bill would stop that practice, and that will be on the House floor tomorrow. Also, we'll see a vote on taxes and fees. Some of the relief that I put forward in my State of the State address for those filing those fees and looking for permits for concealed carry in the state of South Dakota. And then funding of our historic water infrastructure project is going to be up in the Senate here shortly. The Senate passed funding for the shooting range near Rapid City, which is good news for our state, allowing us to hold many different events that we don't have the capacity to host here. And so I'm looking forward to that debate in the House, hoping they'll support that project. There are quite a few vehicle bills that are moving through the legislature. These are bills that have titles. Typically, the legislators will put new language in these bills. What's happening recently is something that concerns me, is that at the last minute, they are putting a lot of new substance and policy into bills late at night and then scheduling it for a hearing or a vote the next morning with very little time for the public to do a true analysis of that language and the impact, or to really have a transparent and open process and debate to make sure that it is the right thing for South Dakota. I think the people of South Dakota appreciate knowing what the real consequences of these bills are, and having vehicle bills that have substantive language put into them late at night and then being voted on quickly the next day is not doing due service to our legislative process. I know it's a busy season, but also I think we should still respect the state of South Dakota and are wanting to know really what happens when policy gets put into statute that impacts the families that live here. So with that, we will open it up to questions.
Yes, Governor Austin Goss, Dakota News Now. Want to lead off. Yesterday, the House passed a COVID-19 vaccine exemption bill, which was not yours. I don't know if you've had a chance to review that or have had a chance to think about that. Are you willing to make your bill more similar to that one, or have you talked to any of those lawmakers about working with them on the version that they brought?
Well, I know there is a couple of different proposals out there. One that I put forward I think works best for the people of South Dakota. I'm looking forward to having support on that and hoping that one gets signed into law. I'll certainly look at every single piece of legislation, but we need to remember what the role of government is and what it is not.
Governor, the House just passed a bill that would reduce the sales tax by 0.5%. You said that the state has the strongest economy in the country. Why does the strongest economy in the country not able to reduce sales tax by 0.5% in your view?
Well, I'm always looking forward to cutting taxes. In South Dakota, we have very few taxes in place. We don't have an income tax. We don't have a corporate income tax. We don't have a personal property tax. All property taxes that are in place stay local. Virtually, the main source of revenue for the state of South Dakota comes in the form of a sales tax, which is at 4.5%. That's the debate that we've got going on right now, is if those can be reduced, and that's something I'm certainly looking at, but I also am concerned with the revenue projections that the legislature has adopted in how they're looking at balancing this budget. Listen, we got a lot of factors that are changing here in South Dakota as far as our future. We've done a fantastic job growing and benefiting the families and businesses here in our state right now. But we also have some challenges ahead. We know the entire state is in a drought. Some of the state, the majority of it is in a very significant drought. Agriculture is our #1 industry. What's sustained us the last couple of years is that agriculture's done well, and then tourism knocked it out of the park. And we have a lot of sales tax revenue coming in the door. We also know that because of federal policies, inflation is going up at historic levels, the highest levels that we've seen in this country in 40 years. We also have interest rates, which we expect will go up. We've got higher energy costs, food costs. Families are very concerned that they have less money in their budget to spend, and when they spend less money, that's less sales tax that comes into the state of South Dakota for us to utilize. So we know we will not grow and have the revenue next year that we have this year. We have a lot of factors at play, a lot of federal dollars that won't be out in our economy, that I've been advising legislators to be much more conservative on their revenue projections. I think it's very, very conservative to adopt conservative numbers on what you will spend and make sure we're not spending more than what we have and set ourselves up for tax increases in the future.
You know, you said inflation is going to make the cost of operating government more expensive. I mean, how do you balance,
Well, it doesn't necessarily make the cost of operating government more expensive. It does, but I'm worried about the families here. I mean, if you think about it, here in South Dakota, we're just a high energy demand and use state. People in other states maybe drive their kids 2 or 3 miles to school. It is pretty regular in the state of South Dakota for people to drive their kids 20, 30, 40 miles to school. A bigger portion of their budget goes towards gas, electricity to keep their houses warm. Food costs are going up.
Wouldn't it make
Transportation
sense
costs are more.
wouldn't it make sense then, I mean, devil's advocate here, and just what was said on the House floor is, wouldn't those folks benefit from paying a half penny less in sales tax then?
They would benefit from paying a half penny sales tax less as well, but they also need to be realistic and conservative in what they're projecting for revenue. So what do they see as growth that people will be spending? When people have less money in their budget, they have less money to go out there and go out to eat or to buy new clothes or to maybe buy something like a new stove or a washing machine. They won't be paying that sales tax because they won't be purchasing it, and the state, to be conservative and to be responsible, should account for that in the projections that we make before we spend that money. What the legislature is doing by some of the debate and what they've argued is we should go ahead and spend a lot more money and just anticipate that we're going to take in less in the future. I don't know necessarily if that is what is conservative. Typically, conservatives want to save for costs that they know they have in the future, make sure that they're not spending more money than what they have and setting themselves up for future tax increases. So I'm in favor of reducing taxes, absolutely, as long as we know that we won't be back here in 2 years raising taxes again on the families in this state.
The question that keeps coming up is we have the strongest economy in the country, as you said. We have record revenues, and I know 2-3 years does not make a trend, but
Well, I would ask them.
Representative Carr said, if not now, when? I mean, what do you need to see to support a sales tax reduction?
He should really look at past trends of what's happened in the state when agriculture has hit a difficult time. We've got a lot of our farmers in the state are very concerned about getting the fertilizer they need to grow crops next year. I've seen crops try to grow with less fertilizer. It doesn't work and they don't yield. Market prices are going to be challenging. Transportation costs are up. Those are less dollars in farmers' pockets. And ag has 8 times the amount of impact on our state's economy than tourism does. So while we're excited and thrilled with what we've seen our economy do the last 2 to 3 years, the facts are ag was pretty stable. Ag did pretty well. And tourism set historic numbers. If we're really truly looking with objective eyes into the future, we know ag is going to struggle. And that will take down our revenues much faster than if tourism just has an average year.
Is that an acknowledgement that South Dakota doesn't have the strongest economy in the nation then?
No, we definitely have the strongest economy. We just are looking to the future. Will we have the strongest economy in 2 to 3 years? I'm going to say let's be conservative in our approach and know that that may not be true.
I feel like there's just two different philosophies.
Yeah, they want to spend money that they don't know they're going to have. And that's what I'm concerned about, is that I want to make sure we're not setting people up for a future tax increase. And that if there's one-time dollars and there's ongoing revenue, let's be responsible to make sure we're being realistic about the numbers that we're adopting. And if we can really look at those issues, then I think that we'll have a fair and honest debate about what this budget looks like. So I am looking for tax reductions every chance we get. I just want to make sure that when we do that, that we're not back here pulling the rug out from underneath South Dakotans and raising their taxes again. Yes, Lee.
I want to maybe ask a bit of a clarifying question here. So are you kind of saying that maybe if the projections weren't 92 million above your projected in December, that maybe a tax cut could have been more palatable?
I would say that I'm still considering tax cuts, that I'm open to tax cuts. I just don't know if I agree with their revenue projections. They've adopted higher revenue projections than I think we may see in the future, and that concerns me.
Governor, there was a recreational marijuana bill that just, for the time being, cleared the Senate by 1 vote. If that finds a way to your desk somehow, are you going to veto it?
Well, it's hard to talk in hypotheticals. I'm not in favor of recreational marijuana. I still believe, I haven't seen anybody get smarter from smoking dope. So we certainly have a medical program. I have supported medical marijuana for years. We're in the process of standing up the best program in the country. And I appreciate the legislators for making some reforms to that program this session. And essentially what we have going on in our state, coming through some of our tribes and what's happening is people are using some loopholes to get medical cards that I want us to really understand what the consequences of that is before we make sure that we stand up another program that we don't necessarily know what's going to happen when it's put out in place in all of our small communities.
Sponsors of the ballot measure have reached out with a bit of a compromise on that, basically saying they'll drop the ballot measure campaign if it's enacted, and reasoning that there wouldn't be home grow in it, local governments could opt out. What do you think about that compromise? Is that something that you would consider?
Well, I would say based on that statement, they must have polling that tells them the people of South Dakota don't necessarily support recreational marijuana. I understand their offer, but it's not something I would take them up on. If the people of South Dakota this fall really want to have that debate, they'll have a few more months under their belt of seeing really what impact the medical program is having.
Governor, a couple housing bills have passed the Senate. There's rumors that they might be in more trouble getting over to the House. Just wanted to see what your read was on that or what your thoughts were on those bills.
Well, again, I included a housing partnership with communities and developers in my budget because legislators said they wanted it. Universally, overwhelmingly, in all the telephone town halls I did with legislators before I put together my budget, the meetings and coffees I had across the state with them, one of the top issues was getting a housing program that allowed a partnership with communities and developers to meet the infrastructure need of building out lots so that housing could be built if these communities chose to. I'm hopeful that the House will support the program that the Senate obviously does. It passed overwhelmingly in the Senate today. If this is what their communities want, that we can put out there to get some help to get people the career housing that they need, I would hope they'd vote for it.
There's been a number of smokeouts as recently as today in the legislature. In the past, I know you've been sort of critical of a smokeout. What do you make of those this year?
Well, a smokeout is utilized by rule. It should be rare because a smokeout says the committee was wrong. A smokeout says that the work that the committee did was flawed and that they did not do due justice to the policy and the debate, and that the entire body of the whole thinks that that committee is not functioning correctly. What's interesting to me is what's happening over in the House is it appears that there's a lot of bills that are being smoked out of the Appropriations Committee, and I think that's more indicative of some of the issues that they're having in their own caucus.
You're just not a fan of smoking anything, are you?
I'm not. I am not. You're correct. You've correctly identified the problem. I love it. Any questions on the phone? All right, Bob?
Yeah, Governor, can you hear me?
Sure, let's go to the phone and then I'll come to you, Bob. Is that okay? Okay. I don't know who's on the phone, but we'll go there.
Hey, this is Jonathan Ellis, Governor.
Oh, hi, Jonathan.
Can you give us maybe a advance on what your speech is going to be at CPAC on Friday?
It's going to be looking at where we've been as a country, where we are today, and what I think our future should focus on.
Well, that's the Clip Notes version.
It is. I hope it can be that short, but I think it'll be a little bit longer than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, we'll go to Bob.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the book.
Oh,
Number one, do you have a co-author on it, or has anyone
I
assisted
do.
you?
There was a young man that helped me named Bill Rivers, who helped me. I would say that I started probably a year ago when quite a few people approached me about it, working with Charlie Hurt, who's a very, very good friend of mine. He started talking to me about some of my stories I told about growing up on a ranch in South Dakota, intrigued by the people here and how they embrace common sense and freedom. And he was very encouraging to me to write down some stories. And I started writing them down. And when I got 80 to 90% of the book done, Bill came along and helped me arrange it into something that people might want to pick up and spend a little time reading. So, this is really a book about the remarkable way of life we have here in South Dakota. It's the story of the people in our state and what makes us unique, and also I think about why we work to get through challenges so well. And it'll be available June 28th. But it's online now, Bob, if you want to go buy a copy.
Can you give us an anecdote from it?
Well, I've got several anecdotes in there from my time in Congress that I don't think a lot of people have heard. Discussions and debates with my leadership, and some of the fights over farm bills, but also some during my time here as governor, behind the scenes interactions that people have not heard before. I tell some about my congressional race when I ran in 2010. There's some discussion of my speeding tickets, if you remember that, Bob, and about some of my preparation for debates and interesting days I had during that time too. So I think people will enjoy those stories, but most of all, I'd say there's quite a bit there about cows, horses, and hunting as well.
Will you sign my copy of it?
I will, Stephen, yes. You know I'm always good to you. I'm not certain it'll make it any more valuable, though.
Governor, a lot of times when high-profile politicians write a book in the lead up to a national election cycle, it indicates that at some level they're interested in running for a national office. You've said in the past you're not. Is that still the case?
Yeah, this is really just a book about South Dakota. And we've decided if anyone in my family's running for higher office, it's going to be my mom. She is very opinionated these days, so I keep telling her she should run for president. She's always right.
I have a question. So the NEA has a list of state funding for teachers. It says that we're 50th in the nation. Are you satisfied with that?
Well, that's why I've encouraged our school boards and our school administrators to put this 6% increase to education, which is historic, into salaries, that it should go into teachers and into staff salaries at the local level.
Will there be a mechanism tied to that funding, or is that possible?
That's up to the legislature. We already have accountability measures in place at the local level that's in state statute. If they want to change that, that's a debate that I'm sure they're continuing to have.
All right, folks, we have time for two more.
House Bill 1039, Trish Ladner's bill talking about land reassessment did not pass committee today, or the tax committee, excuse me. Just kind of wondering your general thoughts. What would you like to see more of, just in terms of what the bill has to say? I know you've in the past said you're not really for increasing everybody else's taxes, but just what would you like to see more from a legislative standpoint?
Well, there's still a couple of other bills that are out there that would make adjustments to property taxes and how they're assessed at the local level. I think equipping our directors of equalization with the tools that they need, which is something the state has always done, to make adjustments locally, that's important. So we'll continue to support legislation that gives them the opportunity to make adjustments when it's necessary to make sure those taxes are more accurate.
Kyle Ireland, South Dakota Broadcasters. Your telemedicine abortion bill passed today, and Steve Haugaard's passed yesterday. What sort of message do you think these bills send to pregnant women in South Dakota who don't want to carry their fetus full term?
Well, I would hope that we would agree that life is important and that even a life in the womb deserves an opportunity to live and to pursue a dream. So I'm hopeful that they recognize that not only in South Dakota do we talk about that life, but that we also show that we will support them. And that these are situations that they often find they are unexpectedly in, and that the state of South Dakota will partner with them and help them get through that challenging situation. Let them know that if they want to raise their child, they can. If they would like to have an opportunity to adopt, that we certainly will help support them through that as well. All right. Thanks so much.